In this naming practice, we're going to look at 3 different groups, and we're going to incorporate cis trans, RNS, and halogen naming. So let's start off with this cyclohexane right here. We have a cyclohexane that has 2 substituents, an ethyl pointing up and a methyl pointing up. Now, since they are both pointing in the same direction, we're going to call this cis. And by naming, we're going to call this carbon number 1 because it has a bigger group, and then this will be carbon number 2. Ethyl alphabetically comes before methyl, so it'll definitely be 1 ethyl, 2 methyl. I'll repeat that. They're both pointing in the same direction, so it's cis. This will be carbon number 1 because it has a bigger group than this carbon. And then ethyl comes before methyl alphabetically, so that's how we name that. Now let's look at this carbon, or this alkane. We have 4 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's a butane. We already know that. Now, these are chiral carbons right here. So since they're chiral carbons, we're going to have to name them by R and S. Well, this carbon right here is connected to a fluorine, a methyl, a hydrogen, and another carbon. Now, the hydrogen is the smallest group, so we're going to ignore this. And on this carbon, it's connected to 4 different groups, and hydrogen is the smallest group, so we're going to ignore it. So let's start off by naming the chirality of this carbon. Fluorine has the highest atomic number compared to a carbon and a carbon. So this is 1. And then on this carbon, we have a bromine versus a hydrogen. And since this one has a bromine, it's a bigger group. So this is going to be 2, and that's going to be 3. So it'll go something like this. So since it's going to the right and clockwise, it should be R, but this, remember, this hydrogen is pointing out towards us. So it'll be S. So this carbon right here is S. Now, if we look at this carbon right here, bromine is the biggest group, so it's 1. Now, comparing these 2 carbons, this one's connected to a fluorine while this one's connected to a hydrogen. So this makes this carbon right here higher priority, so it's 2, and this one's 3. So it goes something like this. So it should also be R, but remember this hydrogen's pointing out towards us, so it's going to be S. So both these carbons are S. Now, how do we name it? Well, you have 2 different ways of naming it. You can name it either 2S, 3S, and then you can say 2-bromo, 3-fluoro. So we can say like this, 2-bromo, bromo's for bromine, and 3-fluoro. Or you can say 2S-bromo, 3S-fluoro. Both these ways are acceptable for writing the name of this alkane. And I might have misspelled fluorine, but I'm not sure. So this would just be ended off with butane because it's a 4-carbon chain. Now, let's look at this last example. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon groups. It's a pentane. We know that for sure. On this chlorine, we have it coming out towards us. That means we have a hydrogen coming behind us like this. Now, if you can see, this carbon is chiral because that's 4 different groups that are all asymmetric. So we're going to look at the smallest group, hydrogen, ignore it, and then we're going to number which one is the highest priority by the Kahn-Ingold system. So we have chlorine as number 1. This 1, 2, 3 carbon chain is ranked 2 compared to this 1 carbon, so it's 3. It goes this way, so it's R, and hydrogen's pointing back, so we're going to keep it R. And then we're just going to call this 2R chloro pentane. So this is the name of that molecule. I'm just going to write cyclohexane here just in case people might forget. Well, so that's how we do that. So with cis, we just have to be pointing in the same direction. If it was pointing in the opposite direction, it would be trans. With R and S, figure out the chirality, and after doing that, you can either write both the chirality, or both the S and the R in the parentheses right here, and then writing 2-bromo, 3-fluoro, or you can do 2S-bromo, 3S-fluoro. And if you're wondering how we numbered these by 2 and 3, bromo is a bigger group than fluorine, so we put a higher priority. And also, we wrote bromo for fluoro because of alphabetical order, just to keep that. And it's the same thing with this molecule. We just put 2R chloropentane. So this one was no different than this second example.